When things are going really great, money's flowing, clients are showing up, ideas are popping, you're feeling really productive. Do you catch yourself or your itty bitty shitty committee in your head having a lot to say about this isn't going to last? Something bad is just around the corner. In this week's episode of Weekly Momentum, I'm going to share with you a way that I cut through all of that noise, listen to my own truth, and gain insights that allow me to not only enjoy the good stuff that I'm receiving right now, but to set myself up to receive more of it in the future. So join me in this week's episode of Weekly Momentum, and I'm going to share the exact process I've been using for a few weeks now that has been working beautifully to cut through all of that noise. Hi, I'm the Get It Done Diva. Welcome to Weekly Momentum. This podcast is for business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals that want to share their brilliance in the world, but are being held back by their inbox and the day-to-day admin that they have to do. I'm here to give you strategies, ideas, and tips to create the space to share your brilliance more in the world and to take what you know and turn it into what you are known for. This week, we're talking about the itty bitty shitty committee and the antidote to it. And I'm going to be tapping into my 30-day planner, which a lot of you are huge fans of. If you don't have one of these 30-day planners, it's kind of a hybrid between a journal and a planner. I highly recommend it. It keeps me sane. And you can find them at getitdonediva.com. Click on Shop Planners. So let's start out by talking about the itty bitty shitty committee. Okay. So shout out to Sharon. Sharon was a member of the Women's Business Momentum Center many, many, many years ago. And she coined that phrase, which I took and ran with. And we all know exactly what I mean when I say that, right? We're talking about the voices in your head that have negative things to say to you. And they can take up quite a lot of space in your head if you're not careful. Even if you're not aware of it, we're all familiar with the idea of having the itty bitty shitty committee, whatever you want to call them, the gremlins. You might give them each different names, negative Nelly, or whatever you want to call it. But we all understand that we have a voice in our head that is telling us negative things. And it's disguising itself as the savior or the hero or the voice of reason. But more often than not, the voice that you are hearing in your head is the itty bitty shitty committee. And often what the itty bitty shitty committee has to say spills out into words and conversations that we have, and even actions that we might take, and influences our lives. Now, I'm sure you're nodding your head because you know what I'm talking about. You have experienced your own version of the itty bitty shitty committee. What I want to do today is something that I encourage my clients to do, and that is equal bandwidth. What I mean by that is, what if you give equal bandwidth to both sides of the debate? Not only give bandwidth to the itty bitty shitty committee, but also to the itty bitty better committee, whatever you want to call that other voice that is in there as well, that does not get nearly as much recognition, and which people often feel is a little out there or a little too woo-woo. But you might call that other voice your inner voice, your intuition. It is the truth. That's the voice that's truly advocating for you. Yet what most people do is they discount the idea, or they can't access their inner voice. They only give credibility to the itty bitty shitty committee. So today what I want to start to introduce to you is the idea of at least being open to listening for and asking questions of that inner voice. And the way that I've been doing that is in my daily planning. I wanted to access my intuition a little bit more. I feel like there's been many times over the years that my intuition or that inner truth has shown up in very profound ways to create change in my life. The peak moment when I chose to quit drinking, there was almost a divine intervention, and I heard that inner voice loud and clear. There's been other moments too where I've just heard a phrase or a word that has dramatically shifted my life. But a few weeks ago, I decided I want to hear that voice more. I want to talk to that voice every day. I don't want it to just be now and again. And when will be the next time that I'm going to experience that voice? I wanted to set up a direct line of communication with that inner voice inside of me, with my intuition, with my truth, because I figured if I could do that, could balance out this conversation that was going on in my head and create more insight of the other side of the equation. Equal bandwidth for both of the parties that are living in my head. And I thought the best place to start was to build it into my morning routine. And so what I did was I will do page 1 of the planning process as it is in the journal. And then when I get to the bottom of page 1, there's a spot here that says the questions that I am asking are. Before I answer that question is I break away to another page in a journal, and for me, what works, you could approach this different ways. I say, in a voice, what do I need to know today? Because I realize that is a way that I am able to access that inner truth the easiest. Writing and letting my inner voice answer me back on the page. Now, maybe that sounds a little bit too much of a stretch for you. You may very well find a different way of doing that for yourself. But what I do is on the page, I'm going to write something like, inner voice, what do I need to do to say, to learn, to know today, to move forward, or to align with my highest potential, or to break through an area that I'm struggling with, right? The question, it shifts every day, but I start out on the page by just letting my inner voice that I know I'm open and I'm asking you a question, and I really do want to hear what you have to say, right? We want to hear that part of the conversation, not just what the itty bitty shitty committee has to say. And so then I just start to write on the page. Now, sometimes when I write, it starts out feeling, well, Marian, I'm just writing. What am I doing this for? Nothing's really happening. And I'll just kind of write on the page, just journal. I don't think too much about what I'm writing. And usually what has happened as I've been doing this over a couple of weeks now is that every day there's some little insight. And it's really great. I'm then making a list of all of these insights that I'm getting from my inner voice and looking at ways that I can start to build them into how I'm approaching my life, my business, and how I can remember these truths so that I can use them going forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share some of them with you today. Some might land with you, some might not, but it'll give you an idea of the kind of dialogue that I'm having with my inner voice, and maybe it'll get you to start thinking about balancing things out in your head a little bit so that you're able to hear your inner voice as well as hearing the itty bitty shitty committee. The way I started it today on the page was I said, inner voice, I feel loved, I feel connection, I feel abundance coming in. But then my logical or critical mind seems to always step in and just rain on the parade. It starts thinking further ahead and letting me know that this is not going to last. This sunny season that I'm having is going to become a rainy season at some point. And I always feel like, I don't know a better way to say it, but that it's just pissing on my parade. And so I said in a voice, what can I do about this? And what I got on the page was that this is something that I'm aware of right now and asking it today. But my inner voice told me this is a big challenge for you that you've been struggling with for years. And I felt this feeling of like relief that I was finally addressing this, like I was finally ready to address this thing that I'd been oblivious to before. And what my inner voice told me was that I was constantly eating the berries, like finding all of these beautiful ripe berries, eating some berries, and then thinking, I need to find where the next berry bushes are so that I can have some more berries. And then I would hike for a few days, I'd get some more berries, and then I'd be telling myself, oh, I've got to hike to the next berry bush and I've got to find some more berries to eat. But I would never fully eat all the berries on the bush where I was. I would just, my inner voice put it so beautifully. It said, you've been skimming the surface and then moving on. Now, obviously, I'm not really talking about eating berries on a bush. What I'm talking about is whatever I'm doing in my business or in my life, I'm not fully milking it. I'm just skimming it like a dragonfly, skimming the surface of the water. And so what's been holding me back is the fact that I've not been really anchoring in and really mining for gold what I'm doing because the itty bitty shitty committee has been pushing me to move on, scaring me into thinking that there's not enough or it's going to run out and I need to look ahead before I run out where I am. Hopefully this is making sense to you. It really, really landed with me today. I really got this idea and it excited me so much because I feel like I'm not the only one who has this doom and gloom that creeps in. And then it pushes me forward when if I just stayed where I was, I would be able to enjoy and master where I am. And it's exhausting when you're always moving forward, and always, here's the clincher, for me, always feeling behind. And as I've gone through the day to day, I've started to realize more and more, oh my gosh, that feeling of like being behind and not be able to just be where I am because I'm going to run out of berries or whatever it is of where I am that I'm going to miss out if I don't like learn the latest AI thing or incorporate that or build a lesson around that, right? All of that fear mongering is coming from the itty bitty shitty committee. And what my inner voice is telling me is that you can stand right here. You can really anchor down and you can master, you can eat your fill, and you can enjoy plenty and then move on when you're ready and you'll experience more abundance. You'll experience more visibility. You'll be able to share your brilliance with even more people by being where you are right now and not feeling that need to constantly be moving forward. Whew, that was a big one today. So I've been doing this every day for 2 weeks, and every day I'm getting a little insight, a little gem from my inner voice, and I feel like I'm learning how to access it more and more in my day-to-day life. Now, this might sound really woo-woo. You might think, Marianne, you're going off on a tangent. What are you talking about here? But I want to come back to what I said a few minutes ago, which was it seems like a very accepted idea that we have an inner critic, that we have an itty bitty shitty committee in our head. That is accepted by many, many, many people. All I am asking you to do today is with equal acceptance, acknowledge that you also have a voice of truth, a hero, an inner voice that is also speaking, but that you're maybe not listening to. And just like if you had a friend that you didn't listen to very often, at some point they stopped talking to you. And so I wanted to create a habit of starting to tune into that inner voice so that I could access it anytime I wanted and to rebalance things in my head. The other thing that happens is when you start to do this, you're going to start to notice that because the inner voice has got more to say and you're actually listening, then it crowds out and drowns out a little bit the itty bitty shitty committee. So if you're wanting to get rid of that inner critic, it's not going to happen by you saying, I want to get rid of my inner critic. But if you instead listen more to your inner voice, to your true voice of truth, of reason, of love that is inside of you, if you give that equal bandwidth, naturally the inner critic will start to diminish. And so as you're going through this week's weekly momentum, What if you really tuned into your inner voice as you're doing it? If you want, you can download the free training weekly planning pages for busy professionals below, and it's going to walk you through the 4 steps of the weekly momentum process. We've got rewind, we've got realign, we've got plan, and we've got plug in. I want you this week, though, to ask your inner voice the answers, not your logical mind, not your itty bitty shitty committee. What if you really intentionally take the time to ask your inner voice, hey, what felt satisfying this week? What are my do overs from this week? How can I learn and grow from this last week? You could perhaps get some insights by tapping into this resource that you've had all along that maybe you've been taking for granted. So when you're rewinding, of course, tap into your inner voice. When you're realigning and you're looking at the bigger picture, your 90 days or your annual plan, I would encourage you to ask your inner voice, how does this feel to you? How can I improve this plan? Are there any adjustments in a voice that I should make to this plan? How am I moving towards this plan? Like, just start to have a dialogue and check in, just like you would a coach or a mentor or a trusted advisor. You can get input from your inner voice about the plan that you've already created and the goals that you've already set. And then, as you're creating your plan for the week in step 3, and you're doing your weekly top 10, you can ask your inner voice, what if you sit there for a minute and you say, inner voice, what are the 10 things that if I were to work on this week would move me forward the most? What would be the best 10 things that I could work on this week? What would be the key projects or to-dos in a voice that you think that I should work on this week? You don't have to go with what you hear, and at first you might stare at a blank page for quite a while if you've never spoken to your inner voice before, but your intuition, your truth has knowledge for you. And what I'm doing this week is just encouraging you to unlock it a little bit. The final step of the weekly momentum process is step 4. This is where you plug into your week. This is where you start to take your items on your weekly top 10 and you put them into your week. Now, what if you had your inner voice help you with that this week? What if you said, inner voice, when would be the best time for me to work on my website? Inner voice, when would be the best time for me to meet up with this friend? Inner voice, what would be fun to do on Friday, right? What if you just start to ask a few questions like this and just see what answers you get? So have fun with this. Just giving equal bandwidth to that inner voice, as well as, of course, you've got your inner critic that's already got plenty to say. You might as well turn the volume up on your inner voice. I hope this has got you thinking a little bit differently this week. I know it's a little bit of a different topic. Isn't it great to find little ways that you can increase your knowledge and your learning and your insight without needing to really do very much except ask questions? Questions are incredibly powerful. I always talk about questions. We use questions all the time in Weekly Momentum. And in my coaching, I'm a huge fan of questions. What's different about using questions today is we're directing them instead at your logical mind. We're directing the questions at your inner voice. Have fun with this week. Start a dialogue. Post in the comments. Reach out to me. Let me know if you get any gems like I did. Maybe you're eating all the berries and moving on too quickly too, or maybe you have some other insights. I'd love to hear them. And I will see you in next week's episode of Weekly Momentum.